Hello, welcome to story time. I am so cold, oh my god, it is so cold right now. I hope you're warm, wherever you are. I hope you're nice and warm. I'm all wrapped up and yeah, ready to read. Got my meditative music on again to just, I don't know, get us into a nice relaxing place, ready to listen to this lovely book that I've been reading for you, Girl, Woman, Other. We have been dotting around between three characters, Yaz and her mum Amma, and now her friend Dominique, the mum's friend Dominique. We've gone back to when she was younger, to a whirlwind romance where she moved and lived on this commune, this woman-only commune. But Nzinga, Dominique's partner, is a little bit controlling, and we kind of left it there. So let's see, shall we, what's occurring with that relationship. Okay. Might finish the chapter today, or I might spread it evenly between today and tomorrow. We'll see. But anyway, part 4 of chapter 1. A few months in, and the love that chose them was too often tumultuous. They were arguing more than Dominique ever had in her life, to the point where she wondered about the truth of Nzinga's breakup with Roz. Nzinga never saw herself as less than faultless. The problem with you, Sojourner, is that you're used to leading instead of being led, she'd say. Remember, you're my apprentice. In house building, in living a truly radical, separatist, feminist, lesbian life, in steering clear of the enemy, in living free of chemical toxins, in living off the soil and on the soil, it really won't work if you insist on fighting me at every turn. So when did our love affair turn into an apprenticeship? I'm a leader myself, aren't I? Ah, but is that really you? Nzinga challenged, often in the middle of the night when Dominique was desperate to sleep and they'd been arguing for hours, and just when she nodded off, Nzinga would shake her awake and start making the same points again. What if you drop the tough girl act and just be? What if you discover who you truly are deep down? What if you allow yourself the luxury of being cared for completely? Dominique's feelings were conflicted. Nzinga was still glorious, still magnificent, still the object of her passion, still someone she believed wanted the best for her, who'd rescued her from London, as she was often reminded. When things were good, Dominique felt the headiness of a love that really might last forever. When they weren't, she wondered what she was doing with someone who wanted to micromanage her entire life, including her mind. Why did Nzinga think being in love with her meant she had to give up her independence and submit completely? Wasn't that like being a male chauvinist? Dominique felt like an altered version of herself after a while, her mind foggy, emotions primal, senses heightened. She enjoyed the sex and affection, outside in the fields when summer arrived, wantonly naked in the heat, unworried about anyone coming across them, what Nzinga called Dominique's sexual healing, as if she'd been suffering terribly when she met her. Dominique let it pass. She wanted to talk this through with friends, Amma most of all the women at Spirit Moon. She needed a sounding board. It wasn't going to happen. Nzinga kept them at a distance, kicked up a fuss when Dominique made overtures of friendship to the women they worked with. She decided it wasn't worth the hassle, and although she sent 3 letters to Amma, she never heard back when she did receive replies from her parents and siblings. Was Amma still angry with her for leaving her in the company? When she once suggested phoning her long distance from the post office in town, Nzinga sank into a terrible funk for days. It was a sign Dominique was rejecting her, who never mentioned it again. Jemmy! Joe Church. Oh my god, I thought it was you. Oh, you recognise someone? Hello everyone that's watching. Hope you're doing all right. Right, part 5. Sorry, I've got hair annoying me. Before arriving at Spirit Moon, Dominique had naively thought of house building in purely romantic terms. She'd imagined her lean, long, much admired body becoming even more toned, supple and strong through using it as nature intended, working in the great outdoors, doing strenuous physical exercise, enjoying camaraderie with her co-workers, getting sweaty and dusty and looking forward to showering it off at the end of the day before sitting down to a hearty meal. Work would be simple, vigorous, and life-enhancing. Well, it didn't quite work out like that. Having never lifted anything heavier than stage weights, she found 8 hours a day of manual labour unbelievably gruelling. Her joints ached and never had time to recover. Her smooth, elegant hands blistered, lacerated and coarsened, even underneath protective gloves, and she had to wear a helmet that didn't shield her face from the sun. She imagined herself down the line, practically crippled, calloused, with a face as craggy as an ancient fisherman. Dominique decided she wasn't cut out for such work, unlike her co-workers, who were built like brick houses, including Nzinga. They were the butch ones. She was not. And even if she was, she never felt the need to categorise herself. It was clear American butchers totally outclassed British butchers in the butch universe. Dominique felt quite femme beside them. At the start of her second week on the job, she refused to get out of bed because her back felt like it was broken. Yes, broken, she told Nzinga, looking tragic, doleful, tearful, until Nzinga promised her lighter duties, because I gotta look after my baby, don't I? Thereafter, Dominique's duties involved minor jobs such as hammering nails, stapling insulation to timber frames, painting, decorating, and providing coffee and snacks several times a day. At home, Nzinga insisted on cleaning the log cabin herself because she wanted to make sure it was as dust mite free as possible. Dominique didn't object, seeing as her idea of housework had always involved waving a feather duster wand over various surfaces as she skipped around a room. Nzinga also insisted on doing all the cooking because she alone understood how to formulate the right nutritional balance for them to sustain perfect health, which Dominique wouldn't have minded, except Nzinga cooked without salt, which was banned from the house, and spices, which Nzinga said agitated both the stomach and the emotions. Eating became both an unpleasant ordeal and a performance of enjoyment. Nzinga also washed Dominique's clothes by hand, because I am enslaved by my love for you, she said, in jest or perhaps not, in spite of Dominique's protestations that she wanted to wash her own undies, especially the ones stained with menstrual blood. Wouldn't we all? Dominique began to regret allowing Nzinga to do everything and make decisions for her. She started to yearn to do the housework herself, yearn to cook, to clean, to do a job that was more intellectually demanding. Her life was becoming empty of purpose other than to love Nzinga unconditionally and, increasingly, obey her. Even the simplest things became a source of difficulty. Was it really her fault men ogled her in town when she wore knee-length shorts and a sleeveless, baggy t-shirt? Should she really have to cover up instead of being provocatively dressed, as Nzinga accused her? Why should she wear her hair, usually a thick, wavy mixture of afro and Indo, almost shaved to her scalp, cut by Nzinga herself with the barber's clippers she bought for this very purpose? Why shouldn't she have a chat with the gentle community baker, Tilly, when she went to collect bread in the mornings? Because the women who appear the nicest are the most passive-aggressive and, ultimately, the most dangerous, because they will come between us. Don't you realise that people want to sabotage our great love affair? And why shouldn't she read books by men that she'd picked up in the library in town? You can't live a womanist life and have male voices in your head, Sojourner. That doesn't make sense. It's taking things too far. Why don't you shut your goddamn mouth? They were sitting up in bed. It was the early hours again. Nzinga had been on her case about her past girlfriends for hours. She brought them up every so often, this time trying to convince Dominique they had been playthings who meant absolutely nothing to her. Dominique was fed up of convincing her that past girlfriends weren't a threat to their present relationship. She'd already told her many times that the love she felt for a couple of them was nothing compared to what she felt for Nzinga, not realising that to admit any kind of love for her exes was unacceptable. She wanted to leave the room, to sleep elsewhere in the cabin or on the porch, anything to escape Nzinga's droning voice. Not possible. Nzinga would follow her out of the room and keep it up, sometimes until dawn. They were all white women. They were never going to stick around. I'm the one who left them, it was true. She was the dumper, never the dumpee. What I'm saying is only a black woman can ever truly love a black woman. Okay, I give in, I agree. Let's turn off the light and go to sleep. I don't want you to give in. I want you to change, to understand my reasoning at a deeper level and accept it as the truth. Ew. Nicole, you just finished reading this book. Dominique's section was my absolute favourite. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Well, it's not easy to listen to, is it, ever, listening to an abusive relationship, but it's very well written. Anyway, we'll move on. Part 6. Almost a year to the day Dominique had arrived at Spirit Moon, there was a knock on the cabin door late one afternoon. Nzinga was cooking. Dominique had been lying on the sofa, staring emptily at the clouds moving in the sky. It was Amma standing before her, delighted to see her. Fucking hell, Dominique shouted. It was so good to see her. They collided in a hug. I was so worried about you, Dom. One postcard when you arrived, and that was it. You never answered my letters. What letters? Dominique was about to say when Nzinga appeared behind her and asked why she'd invited this person to stay. She hadn't, Dominique answered, cringing. Isn't it great Amma's here? Nzinga said nothing, returned to the kitchen, resumed cooking. Undeterred by Nzinga's rudeness, Amma marched into the main area of the open-plan living room cum kitchen and inspected it as if expecting to see corpses hanging from the beams by meat hooks. She flung her knapsack on the floor, threw herself on the sofa. I'm parched, Dom. Give me a tonic water with ice, and you can throw vodka in it as well. You know the drill. Dominique had to explain the house was an alcohol-free zone as she poured Amma water from the filtered jug. Since when? Amma asked, with her face. Nzinga created an atmosphere glutinous with tension. Gluttonous with tension as she silently prepared a thick, garlicky bean and mushroom stew which she served with wholemeal bread. On the wooden dining table, a bench either side. Nzinga looked down at her food as she ate. Dominique could tell Amma found the meal unpalatably bland. She'd asked for salt. There was none. By now, Dominique was almost used to a salt and spice-free diet. The initial cravings had gone. Her appetite had adjusted its expectations. She asked her friend about everyone back home, eager to know the goss, careful not to show any affection for those she'd left behind or regret at leaving them. Amma volleyed back a few questions about life at Spirit Moon. Dominique told her they work on the building site 5 days a week, sometimes 6, spend evenings back here, often exhausted. Nzinga cooks up a storm in the evenings, early nights usually. Weekends they go shopping and for walks. They have a vegetable garden which needs tending. Read books, by women, it goes without saying, preferably feminist. Sometimes they see a film in town, walk out if it's offensive. She wanted to add, it's a bit like you and I in our early theatre days, Amma, except we never left a show that offended us without heckling. She didn't say this. Nzinga would feel undermined. Dominique would be accused of elevating her bolshy history of heckling with Amma over their relatively passive cinema walkouts. Dominique answered Amma's questions. No, they didn't mix with the other women in the community, preferring not to get involved. And yes, life was quiet. How they liked it. It was perfect. That's what it was. Perfect. As she spoke, Dominique was embarrassed by how pathetic and puritanical her life sounded, how devoid it was of the happenings of back home, the never-ending dramas of relationships and the women's scene, the highs and lows of running a theatre company, the city itself, the politics, the demonstrations against Maggie Thatcher, protesters against Clause 28, marches to reclaim the night, weekends spent at Greenham Common, their outlaw friends who were involved in lost checkbook scams, who lined their shopping bags with silver foil to avoid alarm detection in department stores, who jumped over ticket barriers at tube stations and jumped traffic lights as a rule. It felt so long ago, so far away. The year spent with Nzinga had been without regular updates to Amma, who would have questioned and challenged her on everything. She was her sounding board, her truth-sayer, her #1 supporter. Nzinga only looked up when she'd finished eating. Gonna hit the sack. She took the pottery bowl to the metal sink and before she reached it, hurled it in with such force it smashed and shards flew out. She brushed past Amma as she stormed across the floor to the bedroom. "Sojourner, you coming?" "Who's Sojourner?" Amma asked as Dominique leapt up. Dominique didn't answer as she left the room. It was 7 p.m. The next morning, Dominique found a chance to sit with her friend on the steps outside while Nzinga was in the shower. She takes 10 minutes, Dominique said, glancing nervously behind her. "It's a ritual she won't forgo, even with you here." Amma suggested they take a walk away from the madhouse. Dominique said the stoop would have to do, otherwise Nzinga would get suspicious. Suspicious of what? Part 7. The field opposite the cabin that morning was of the most vivid green ryegrass as it extended all the way out of sight to the end of the property. A pine forest was visible in the distance. The sky was a heavenly, cloudless blue. Dominique was proud to show off the view to Amma, who knew her London flat so well, with windows that backed onto a pub's blackened walls and belching water pipes. Surely Amma would be convinced she'd made the right move in at least one respect. This is paradise, right? Amma mumbled something about the right place with the wrong person and complained about the god-awful cup of dandelion coffee she'd been forced to drink, as the real thing wasn't allowed, and she now had a banging caffeine withdrawal headache barely numbed by the painkillers Nzinga had caught her popping out of their plastic casing at breakfast, who then proceeded to tell Amma off for bringing drugs into her home. The only words she'd spoken to me so far, Dom. They sat there for a moment, soaking it up, Dominique wondering when Amma was going to kick off. She didn't disappoint, launched into one about her friend being under the evil Cindy's spell, and did she know that cult gurus controlled their followers by cutting them off from their family, friends, colleagues, neighbours, anyone who might intervene and say, "Hey, what's happening here?" "I'm going to organise a rescue attempt, Dom. A group of mates from London who will descend like an SAS squad and rescue you from batshit crazy Cindy." She laughed. Dominique didn't. "I'm in the middle of something, Ams. I'm trying out a new way of living, a new way of being. Nzinga is showing me how to live a truly womanist life. Male energy is disruptive, Amma. The patriarchy is divisive, violent, and authoritarian. Misogyny is so unthinkingly entrenched. I can see why women give up on them forever. It's so special here, so liberating to be removed from having to deal with male oppression every day." "I've always known you to like men, Dom. We even love those who are close to us. We might understand the patriarchy. Thanks for telling me how it works, by the way. But we see men as individuals, don't we? You were never separatist or misandrist. What's happened to you?" "Nothing's happened to her," Nzinga's voice boomed over their heads. She'd been standing behind them. She wedged one damp, muscular leg between the women, and then the other, effectively separating them physically. They'd been linking arms. Nzinga plonked herself down in the space she'd created, was wearing a towel, still dripping wet, launched into a speech about all men ultimately being complicit in a patriarchal system that enabled female genital mutilation, and seeing as women's genitalia are being butchered all over the globe in the name of culture or religion or whatever, why not do the same to men who perpetrate most of the world's sexual violence? Bank their sperm when they're virile teenagers, then castrate the bastards. Nzinga pressed herself up against Dominique, an arm around her neck. It felt less like a sign of affection, more like a strangling. Amma stood up, went into the house, packed her carry-all, returned to stand in front of them. "I'm off, back home. You're home too, Dom. Come with me." Dominique didn't need rescuing. She shook her head. Nzinga pulled her closer, kissed her noisily on the cheek. Good girl. Ugh. I'm too into it. Let's go on. Let's finish the chapter. Part 8. After Dominique and Nzinga had completed 10 new properties at Spirit Moon, Nzinga wangled a deal with Gaia to stay in their home until they could secure a contract elsewhere. There was nothing to do except be with each other all day. Dominique should have sloped off then because the relationship was already irreparable, but she found herself unable to make such a big decision when she'd lost the ability to make even the smallest ones, such as what she ate or wore and who she was allowed to speak to. She became wrapped up in the nightmare cocoon of Nzinga's increasing paranoia. These women are out to destroy our great love affair, Sojourner. When she came across the other women, Nzinga was at her side, so she couldn't really speak freely to them, or she'd be told off later for saying the wrong thing. Even her morning trips to fetch bread from Tilly provoked another all-night rant after Nzinga followed her, analysed their body language from a distance, and decided they were flirting. Nzinga announced she'd fetch the bread for herself from now on. She also went into town on her own to do the weekly shop because of Dominique's imagined behaviour around men, and no, not getting you any chocolate as a special treat, it's bad for you. And did she really need to see the dentist, who was a man, or was it a ruse? The day Nzinga punched Dominique on the arm was the day she thought she'd leave, reasoned it was a one-off, discovered it wasn't when a single punch progressed into multiple ones. Dominique didn't want to escalate Nzinga's aggression by fighting back until she confessed to herself she didn't really have it in her to do so. She was genuinely non-violent. When she tried to storm out of the house to get away during rows, Nzinga blocked the door with her imposing size, legs astride, ordered her to sit down on a chair and breathe deeply, Sojourner. Breathe deeply. Rid yourself of this negative energy. The world is dangerous out there. All day Nzinga's voice megaphoned into Dominique's consciousness, resounding, pounding. She spent such little time alone. She forgot how to spend time alone. She took to sleeping in late and going to bed early. She hated being outside in the unrelenting brilliance of sunshine. When she wasn't sleeping, she was staring into space. It was a Saturday morning. Nzinga had headed into town in the truck to do the weekly shop, saying she'd be gone all day. A test. She usually returned after a couple of hours and snuck up to the cabin on foot to see what Dominique was getting up to. This time, as soon as she left, Gaia appeared outside their home on her moped, as if she'd been parked up somewhere waiting for Nzinga to leave. Dominique heard the engine first. Nobody ever came by. Who was this? She watched Gaia walk towards the cabin. Gaia said, "We're concerned about what's happening here. You're not the woman you were when you arrived. You haven't been spotted for over a month. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Dominique replied, standing at the door, not daring to open it too widely. Gaia stared at her with the knowledge and wisdom of having spent her entire adult life surrounded only by women. She sat on the steps. "Dominique, come and sit with me." "We know what she's like," Gaia said. "We've all experienced her wrath, her unreasonableness, her general animosity towards the world, to us. You can talk to me." Dominique resisted saying anything. It would be such a betrayal of Nzinga, who insisted on complete loyalty, all the while pinching her arm so hard it bruised, so that she'd remember to never, and I mean never, talk to anyone about me or our relationship. "You can talk to me," Gaia repeated, laying a light hand on Dominique's own, transmitting compassionate strength to her, until Dominique felt herself softening and admitted to Gaia, as much as to herself, that yes, she was trapped in a relationship with a violent woman of unsound mind with no foreseeable way out. In betraying Nzinga, she was at least being true to herself. Gaia comforted her. "We will help you get away, okay? Really? Do you have any funds?" She never got round to adding my name to what was supposed to be a joint bank account, and asking for my share of our savings will be tantamount to telling her I'm leaving her, and I don't know what will happen then. "I can loan you enough money to get yourself sorted. Where do you want to go? Back to England?" "Not really, at least not yet. I can't face the humiliation, and I'd like to see more of America." "I have friends in West Hollywood who will put you up until you have plans. Pay me back when you can. Do you have a passport?" "Nzinga keeps it safe for me. I know her hiding place." "We'll come by this time next Saturday to drive you to the airport." It's a bit upsetting. Anyway, part 9. It took years for Dominique to stop beating herself up for staying with Nzinga for as long as she did. Nearly 3 years. 3 years. How could she have been so weak when she'd been so strong and was again after she left her? Grateful to go back to the self she had lost. After Spirit Moon, she stayed with Gaia's lawyer friends, Maya and Jessica, who welcomed her the afternoon she arrived with a meal of fresh salads and a peaceful little yellow room at the back of their expensive property overlooking their orange and lemon grove. That first night, Dominique felt disorientated. Nzinga was still in her head. In fact, she squatted it illegally for a very long time. She often had nightmares of her coming at her through the bedroom window, brandishing the hunting knife she'd had when they met, which she'd kept under the mattress. The next day, Maya and Jessica asked her what she'd like for dinner. Dominique wasn't used to having a choice, spent ages deliberating. In the end, they indulged her wishes and barbecued a meat medley of burger, turkey drumsticks, sausages, pork, lamb chops and steak, with salad. After a few bites, she ended up running to the loo to throw up, returned and picked at the salad. That evening, she stayed up late with the 2 women who'd met each other at art school, swapped their careers as impoverished artists to pursue corporate law for job satisfaction in order to earn big bucks and work 18-hour days that killed their creativity. They planned to retire at 50, resurrect their artistic selves, if it's not too late. They were enthralled to hear about her theatre and clubbing life in London, admired the fact that she and Amma had chosen a creative path, even when it was financially unstable and they'd probably never be homeowners or have a pension. Dominique sat with them in their warm grove, drinking delicious wine late into the night. It was like a sedative was wearing off, and she felt herself surging with energy. She was hyper, she was high, she was coming back to life. Part 10. Dominique fell in love with the West Coast, entered into a marriage of convenience with a gay man, assisted by Maya and Jessica, who loaned her the cost. Her English accent was a huge selling point in her dealings with Americans. It elevated her, as did her model looks. She was told often enough. And cool biker style, lesbians in particular wanted to help her, to open doors for her, to be part of what they thought she represented. Maya and Jessica allowed her to live cheaply at theirs for a couple of years until she found her feet. Her first job was working in admin for a film company, a stepping stone to producing live arts events. She felt blessed that she could quickly establish herself, and once she was, invited Amma to visit, who never said an outright, "I told you so." Dominique also attended a weekly counselling group for female survivors of domestic abuse. As the weeks passed, she heard people share their life stories and reach life-changing epiphanies. When she took the plunge, she discovered it was indeed cathartic. She came to appreciate that as the oldest girl in a family of 10, she'd had to mother the younger ones when she'd been deprived of being properly mothered herself. As soon as she was born, her mother was pregnant with another child, and each newborn baby had to have her mother's full attention. Dominique worked out she'd been drawn to Nzinga because she was subconsciously looking to be mothered. Then, mothering had turned into smothering, and Mummy turned out to be Daddy, as she told Amma, who disagreed and said it was about bad luck rather than unresolved childhood issues. "You're becoming too American, Dom." Dominique kept in touch with Gaia until she passed away. She'd written that Nzinga had been evicted from the community soon after Dominique left, had raged across the property trying to find out where ch1 had gone, threatening people and smashing windows. The police were called. The women didn't press charges. Rest easy. She doesn't know where you are. Dominique still spent years having nightmares about Nzinga coming at her through a crowd or driving into her as she crossed a street or appeared in a public place, even during her opening speech for the Women's Art Festival she founded after a few years in LA. Nzinga would be berating her for leaving her when she'd so kindly taken her on as an apprentice, shown her how to be fully womanist in a misogynist world. "I gave you everything, everything. You'd be nothing without me, ch1, nothing." Many years later, Dominique was told that Nzinga had died some 12 years after she left her. Her last girlfriend, Sahara, introduced herself at the festival. She'd become lovers with Nzinga at a woman of colour spirituality retreat in Arizona. She talked about you a lot, Dominique. She'd heard about the success of this festival and totally took credit for it. She was your mentor and had made you, she said. You'd used her. No thanks, no public acknowledgement, no belated payments for her extensive investment in your personal development. She was planning to come to LA to confront you, but it was never the right time. I now think she was scared that the person she'd thought of as weak had become powerful. I totally bought her story about you until a few months into our relationship. She started treating me like a disciple instead of a lover and became possessive, aggressive, and played mind control games. I was in my 20s. She was in her 50s. She wouldn't let me out of her sight, said I should be grateful that she'd rescued me. From what? Who knows? I never got an answer that made any sense. I was ready to leave her within the year when she had a major stroke, became immobilised, and I couldn't. She was so utterly alone in the world except for me. No home, friends, no family to call on. She said everyone always left her. When she died, I felt released. Hearing of her former lover's death, Dominique also felt released. Sad, too, that Nzinga's life really had been one of abandonment, and she'd not been capable of seeing that the fault, as an adult, lay with her. Dominique met Laverne in her counselling group, as the only two lesbians that they gravitated towards each other. Laverne was an African-American woman who liked to blend into the background, who spoke softly and thought deeply. Originally from Oakland, now based in LA as a sound technician, her previous girlfriend had been violent. She left her the third time she ended up in A&E. Dominique found Laverne pleasant and easy company. She'd studied international relations, was well-read and passionately interested in global current affairs. Dominique began to expand her reading beyond women's literature into non-fiction books about the world at large. They could spend hours discussing the consequences of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the breakup of the Soviet Union. Or the marriage war played out in the media between Princess Diana and Prince Charles, or the wars in the Middle East, or the Brixton and LA riots, or the relationship between climate change and capitalism, or the histories of post-colonial Africa, India, the Caribbean and Ireland. Their friendship deepened over time and eventually became physical. They respected the free will of each other and made no demands. They were lovers for 4 years before moving in together. Even then, Dominique worried that the equilibrium of their relationship, from seeing each other several times a week to seeing each other every day, would throw their relationship off balance. It didn't. They wanted children, adopted baby twins, Talia and Rory, whose parents had been killed in a gangland shooting. They became a family, married each other when it became legal. Dominique moved to America nearly 30 years ago. She considers it her home. End of chapter 1. Well, that was a good chapter. Dominique's story. It's amazing. I don't even know if it's a true story. I hope it is. I don't know. Kind of like the idea that it is. Must find out. Thanks for listening. I feel a bit warmer now for having done something, for performing a little bit. Hope you're all cosy and enjoying your January as best you can. I had some lovely sunshine today, had a nice woodland walk. I was quite down yesterday when I read to you guys. It cheered me up a bit, but it didn't really do the trick, just because I need some human interaction. But I'm feeling better today. I am really looking forward to tomorrow because I am doing some mindfulness teaching for my qualification. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then one more day of isolation and then I'm free to see people again. So lots to look forward to. You're welcome, Gary. yeah, I finished that chapter, and that is about a quarter of the book. We're on page 113. It's about 400 and something pages. So, let's see how I feel tomorrow. Might be back. I do want to do a self-help book, but like a funny one, you know, just to get us through these boring winter months. But this book is good, so maybe I'll press on. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, sending you lots of warm optimism and positivity for this month. It's not an easy one. Yeah, I hope you're all well. And if you're not well right now, I hope you're okay. And I hope you get better soon. All right, see you later.